The search team was focused, moving methodically through the dense forest. The air was thick with tension, every second counted. Somewhere out there, a lost child was alone in the wilderness, and time was running out. Then, without warning, the K-9 officer bolted. The highly trained German shepherd had been following orders, sniffing for clues, but suddenly, he took off at full speed, breaking away from his handler. "Stop him!" one of the officers shouted, but it was no use. The dog was running faster than they had ever seen before. He wasn't just following a scent, he was chasing something. What happened next left everyone speechless. Because when they finally caught up, they found the K-9 standing completely still, staring at something hidden beneath a fallen tree. And then, they heard it. A soft, barely audible sound. A child's whimper. But the real shock. What the dog did next would bring even the toughest officers to tears. Now, before we continue, if you love incredible stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new one. And tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed a dog's unbelievable instincts in action? We'd love to hear your stories. The call came in just before nightfall. A 4-year-old boy had wandered away from his backyard and into the dense forest beyond. His parents had searched frantically for hours before finally calling the authorities. By the time the search and rescue team arrived, darkness had begun creeping in. The air was growing colder, the wind howling through the trees. Time was against them. The officers wasted no time. They brought in their best tracker, a highly trained K-9 officer named Max. Max had led countless search operations before, finding lost hikers, missing persons, and even criminals on the run. But this time, it was different. This time, it was a child. As soon as Max picked up the scent from the boy's clothing, his body tensed. His ears perked, his nose twitched, and without hesitation, he lunged forward, leading the officers deep into the woods. The search team followed closely, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The radio crackled with updates, officers calling out the boy's name. But after nearly an hour of searching, nothing. No footprints. No sound. Just the endless, suffocating silence of the forest. And then, it happened. Max froze. His entire body went stiff, his nose high in the air. He had found something. His handler braced himself, ready to give the next command. But before he could speak, Max bolted. The leash slipped from his handler's grip as the K-9 took off at full speed, disappearing into the darkness. The officers shouted his name, their voices frantic. But Max didn't slow down. He didn't stop. He was running toward something. Something only he could sense. And when they finally caught up, what they saw sent chills down their spines. The officers pushed through the thick underbrush, branches scratching their arms and faces as they struggled to keep up with Max. The dog had never disobeyed orders like this before. "Max, stop!" his handler called, but the K-9 didn't even hesitate. He was running like his life depended on it. The search team's radios crackled. Other officers were spreading out, scouring the dark forest. The boy's parents were still waiting at the edge of the woods, their voices trembling with fear. Then, just ahead, a faint rustling. One of the officers swung his flashlight toward the sound, his pulse hammering in his ears. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating Max's silhouette. The dog was standing completely still. His body was rigid, ears perked, his tail lowered in cautious alert. And then, they heard it. A sound so soft, so fragile, it nearly blended into the wind. A tiny whimper. Max whined and took a step forward, lowering his head. The officers rushed closer, their flashlights dancing across the forest floor, until finally, they saw him. The little boy, curled up beneath a fallen tree, his tiny body shivering from the cold. His face was streaked with tears, his small hands clinging to damp leaves. But the most unbelievable part? Max wasn't just standing over him, he was pressing his body against the child, shielding him from the cold. And then, something happened that none of them expected. The boy reached out and buried his face into Max's fur. The dog stood firm, letting the child cling to him, his warm breath steady and calm. It was as if he was saying, "You're safe now. I found you." The officers were speechless. After 12 hours alone in the woods, with temperatures dropping fast, this child might not have survived. But Max had made sure he did. And what happened next would leave everyone in tears. For a moment, no one moved. The little boy clung to Max, his tiny fingers gripping the dog's thick fur as though letting go would mean getting lost all over again. The officers were stunned. How had Max found him so quickly? The search team had been scouring the area for hours with no luck. But Max had known exactly where to go. "Buddy, can you hear me?" one of the officers asked gently, kneeling beside the boy. The child didn't answer. His lips trembled from the cold, his cheeks streaked with dirt and dried tears. But his eyes, they weren't filled with fear. They were filled with trust. Not in the officers. In Max. The K-9 had settled beside the boy, wrapping his large body around him for warmth. His tail thumped against the ground, slow and steady, a silent reassurance. "I'm here. You're safe now." One of the officers radioed in. "We found him. We need medical support now." As they carefully lifted the boy into their arms, Max let out a low whimper. He didn't want to leave his side. The team rushed back through the forest, moving as fast as they could without jostling the child too much. Max ran right beside them, never once letting the boy out of his sight. When they finally emerged from the trees, the child's mother let out a scream. "My baby!" She ran forward, collapsing to her knees as the officer handed her son over. She clutched him tightly, sobbing into his tiny shoulder. But then, her eyes locked onto Max. The dog, panting from exhaustion, stood a few feet away, watching. His ears perked up, waiting. The mother's lip trembled as she whispered, You saved him." What she didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that Max had done something even more incredible than just finding the boy. And when the truth came out, it would leave everyone in shock. The officers and paramedics worked quickly, ensuring the little boy was safe. His mother sobbed into his shoulder, unable to believe he was finally in her arms again. But even in the warmth of her embrace, the boy's small hands reached out, searching for Max. The K-9 stood a few feet away, watching closely, his ears perked up as if waiting for permission to approach. He had done his duty. But to the little boy, Max wasn't just a hero. He was his protector. With a weak voice, the child mumbled something no one could quite hear. His mother pulled back, wiping her tears. "What is it, sweetheart?" she asked softly. The boy turned his tired eyes toward Max and whispered, "Doggy, safe." The officers exchanged glances, their throats tightening with emotion. It was clear, throughout his entire terrifying ordeal, this little boy had only felt safe when Max was with him. The officer who handled Max knelt down and ran a hand through the dog's fur. "You weren't just doing your job, were you, buddy?" he murmured. Max wagged his tail slightly, but his gaze never left the child. Then came the moment that stunned everyone. The boy's mother, still holding her son, turned to Max's handler and asked, "Can he come with us?" Silence fell over the group. Max was a police K-9, a trained working dog with responsibilities. But at that moment, he wasn't just an officer's partner. He was this boy's guardian. The officer let out a slow breath, looking at his loyal partner. He had never seen Max react this way to anyone before. He gave the dog a final pat and nodded. "He belongs with you now." The little boy's tired face lit up with the first real smile since he'd been found. Max trotted forward, gently pressing his head against the boy's small hands. He had completed his mission. But now, he had a new one, to protect this child for the rest of his life. And as the ambulance doors closed, driving them toward a new beginning, everyone watching knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a rescue. This was fate. The officers stood in silence, watching the ambulance disappear down the road. Some of them had seen incredible rescues before, but this one was different. Max's handler let out a long sigh, running a hand through the dog's fur. "Guess you knew where you belonged all along, huh, buddy?" he murmured. Max sat obediently beside him, his ears twitching as if still listening for the little boy's voice. He had spent years as a highly trained search and rescue dog, but in that forest, under those desperate circumstances, he had made his own choice. He wasn't just following orders. He was following his heart. But then came the real challenge, convincing the department to let him go. Max wasn't just any dog. He had been trained for years, worth thousands of dollars in specialized education, and was one of the best K-9 officers on the force. Letting him go wasn't a decision anyone could make lightly. For the next several days, the officers debated. Some believed Max should finish his service. Others saw what everyone else had seen that night, that Max had already chosen his new mission. And then, the final decision came. The department's captain stood before the team, clearing his throat. "Max has served with loyalty and honor," he said. "And we all know there's no stronger loyalty than a dog's love." Then, he turned to Max's handler and said the words that made everyone hold their breath. "Let him go home." At that moment, the entire unit erupted in cheers. Max's handler knelt beside him, scratching behind his ears. "Looks like you got yourself a new job, partner," he chuckled. But Max wasn't paying attention anymore. Because standing at the entrance of the station, small and fragile but smiling brighter than ever, was the little boy. The child's arms were open wide, waiting. And Max ran straight into them. From that moment on, Max wasn't just a K-9 officer. He was a best friend, a guardian, a forever protector. And he never left that boy's side again. Max's story is a reminder that true loyalty knows no boundaries. He wasn't just a highly trained K-9 officer. He was a protector with a heart full of devotion. And in the end, he found his true purpose. Stories like this prove that sometimes, fate has bigger plans than we could ever imagine. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. What do you think makes the bond between a dog and a human so special? Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of loyalty, and subscribe so you never miss another incredible, heartwarming story. And if you want to see more emotional stories like this one, click on the video that's on your screen right now. Thank you for watching. Until next time.